Let's go back to our top story now. The producers of a controversial film say they'll appeal the ban. That's after the movie, at least the Film and Publications Board ruled that the movie contained child pornography. The film of good report had to be dropped from the program at the Durban International Film Festival. Let's talk to Mlimandlela Ndamase now, who represents the FPB. A very good morning to you, sir. Thanks again for joining us. Now, you've been accused of being excessively sensitive and too quick to ban this particular film. Have you been overly heavy-handed in your approach?
Well, as the Film and Publication Board, we classify over 3,000 to 4,000 titles every year. It is not in our nature to be sensitive. We are guided by the Film and Publications Act, of which it requires no sensitivity of us. It's very clear in terms of how we should execute our mandate and how we should implement the classification guidelines of the Film and Publication Board. And no exception has been made in this case. We have implemented the guidelines in accordance with how the Act requires of us as the board. And unfortunately, that's the decision that our classifiers unanimously came to in classifying this particular movie.
How many minutes of the movie did your classifiers watch? Because the producer alleges that only 20 minutes of the movie was watched.
Well, the Act is very clear that when our classifiers classify content, should they come across any content which they believe to be illegal, and in this case child pornography, they are required to stop classification immediately. In this particular film, that occurred at 28 minutes, and therefore our classified, and once again I must clarify that each and every piece of content is classified by a minimum of 3 classifiers. Unanimously, they then agreed that the content was child pornography and therefore refused classification and did not proceed with the classification. And
what would constitute child pornography? The actress in the movie was over 20. Was it because the role she was playing was that of a child rather than the fact that she herself was a child?
Well, the definition we work with is that in the Film and Publications Act, and that definition is very clear that child pornography, especially sexual conduct of a person under the age of 18 years of age, however real or simulated, is illegal in the country, and therefore on that basis we had to classify it as child pornography.
One argument suggests that there could have been some redeeming qualities in this movie, perhaps opening social discourse around the reality of many young South African girls who have been exploited by their teachers or engaged in sexual behavior with teachers, that this missed an opportunity for real discourse.
Well, I don't think there's an opportunity missed. I think we can still have that discussion. But importantly, you must remember that our classifiers are guided by the Act, and it is not for them to engage in discourse. Theirs is to implement the Film and Publications Act and its guidelines as required, and the discourse is something that we as society should engage in. And I'm sure the creatives out there could find a number of ways of trying to trigger us to engage in that discussion, because it is an important discussion. However, we just always need to make sure that the discussions we have, we don't do more damage than harm. We don't do more damage than actually cure some of the social ills that we're trying to confront.
Now, you touched on the creators. I think let's dwell on that for a second, if we may. Where do you draw the line between art and pornography?
Well, we are fortunate because our Act does not require us to draw that line. When it comes to child pornography, it becomes very clear once again that no exemption may be made, even for artistic merit, bona fide documentaries or scientific research. So child pornography entirely and holistically is outlawed in the country. And I think we must also clarify that it's not only a South African perspective, but internationally. I think the international community has come to the conclusion that the use of children in pornography or the depiction of children in pornographic content is illegal and therefore should be applied as such in law.
I think before we move on to the next film, briefly, why was it this done at the last minute? We understand the film was about to be aired in a matter of days or minutes. I'm not too sure on the time span, but I know that it was on the verge of being shown when it was pulled at the last minute. Why was that the case?
Well, I think the producers of the film in this instance have decided to use this entire issue for other objectives, and which are beginning to express themselves as we go. We classified the film, gave a decision, I believe, in time where they could have made alternative arrangements to show a different film. But however, they decided to proceed the way they proceeded, and that is within their rights. But as I have said, normally we have a very good working relationship with the festival. In line with our Act, we exempt some of the films that are being shown at the festival to promote the activities activity of local content producers, and we had exempted a number of films at the festival, but we had requested to see 7 titles which we believed we needed to look at based on the synopsis that we've received. And of those 7 titles, Of Good Report was one of the titles, and unfortunately our classifiers came to the conclusion they came to with regards to that film.
One of the titles was also The Look of Love. What's happening with that film?
Well, that film has not been banned. Our classifiers have not classified it. The organizers did not submit it to us in the appropriate content for us to classify. And should they submit it to us, we are willing to classify it, and I'm sure we'd even make an exceptional classification to ensure that the festival can continue without any hindrance. We are partners to the festival. We will be at the festivals from tomorrow. And we've always been at the festival, and the festival is an initiative that we support and we hope will assist us to grow the film industry economically and to assist more young people in our country to participate in the industry and become directors and producers and be able to show their content to South Africans in the world.
I'll have to leave it there. Thanks again for joining us. That was Mlimandlela and Ndamase from the Film and Publications Board.
News that moves. eNCA.com.